Hello and welcome to School Health Presents Holistic Transitioning. I'm Dr. Rheipp. Our episode today is going to be looking at curricular preparation. Curricular preparation in the sense of what are we doing here during the summer in order to get ready for the time in the fall when our buildings open back up. We have in our previous video already discussed the ideas about disinfecting and making those classrooms as safe as possible, depending upon what your district decides to do. So we talked about things in that particular video, like overall disinfecting, how you can do it as a district as opposed to always having a third party come in, and things that you might be using along the way. In this particular video, we're going to be taking a look at what is that future of education as we've gone on. As I've been following many of the groups out there, it's great what's happening. We're really developing an idea of the curriculum actually being more alive than ever for our students. However, for our exceptional students, that can be very difficult because there are so many other things that we need to take into account. So we're going to take a look at that with the idea as a basis that we should not be reinventing the wheel. Why are we looking at it that way? Whenever you talk curriculum revision, it can bring chills to the spine because you think about long meetings and discussions and the amount of time it takes, and we don't have a lot of turnaround time getting ready for our students coming in. As a matter of fact, having spoken with several districts out there, I recognize that there are some districts looking at opening not just in August, but even within the July timeframe too. So what are we able to do that make things as structured and yet as accessible as possible? So we'll be going through several things today. And as you know, I've got my trusty dry erase board as we're talking through. But you'll notice one of the things right off the bat that we're going to be talking about is the whole idea of mental health as we transition back into the school year. Administrators, this goes for any classroom, not just your classrooms for those individuals who have differing abilities. All of our students, as they're coming back in, really need to be supported. There's a lot of anxiety out there right now, and that anxiety has been compounded by issues that we're seeing within our culture too, and understanding each other and how to best do that. So what we've got to do is understand that on day one, it's not going to be like it has been in other years where you come in, you sit down, you open your textbooks and start working on a lesson. Day one really needs to be a point in time where we get a sense of where are the students at when it comes to their own well-being. Because again of that anxiety, those angers, those frustrations, in the uncertainty of what's happening. Are they going to be in school for the entire year, or are they going to be pulled out at some point in time? We don't know what it's going to be like. We've already seen what's happened with some universities, where some universities are saying, listen, we're getting rid of fall break, but after Thanksgiving, everything may be strictly online. So we've seen hybrid things already grow and develop. We want to keep that in mind as we're working with our exceptional students, that we need to understand what is going to be a functional way of creating hybrid classrooms as we go in. But mental health must be the start. Where are our students at? How do we work with them? Just talking to them, getting information from them about what's going on. The structure of the school year may actually help to decrease the anxiety over time. But initially, there's still going to be that change in routine and a concern. How long am I going to be here in this particular classroom? So as you're putting your lesson plans together early on, administrators, I encourage you to work with your teachers that the first week really should be more of getting to see where the students are and supporting them in whatever way they need. Have the counselors ready to go. Have your teachers ready to go too, because guess what? Our teachers have also been affected by everything that's happening. How can we best support them? And that should be something that's going on here during the summer also. The next thing we want to talk about in that way then is As we enter day one, what needs to happen? First and foremost, on day one, we need to get information from the parents. The bit of information we need from the parents that'll be critical for maintaining this idea of a hybrid type of education is going to be, number one, do they have access to the internet? It is amazing to me how many groups out there outside of education just automatically presumed one of two things about education taking place in an online format. Number one, you had groups that were saying, oh, this will never work. This is a newfangled thing and blah, 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 blah. Guess what? They're wrong. As I was going back through some of my materials over the course of my teaching and administrative career in order to get ready for this video series and working with our schools as they go back, I ran into some courses that I took to complete my permanent certification in Ohio back in 2003 that were all online. What? Yes. For those of us who've been around, the Teacher Education Institute actually in the early 2000s began to experiment with online courses. They work a lot differently than we have them today. They did not have Zoom meetings or that. We had a lot we had to do in the early phases of Blackboard. But online courses were around. Guess what? Before that, we had courses that were nationally recognized that came through a different way of learning. These were called correspondence courses, and correspondence courses actually worked in many occupations, things like being an administrative assistant, being someone who had certain skills that they were bringing to an office or a workplace. These were the courses that weren't being offered at the university level. Those types of courses have been around throughout the context of the 20th century. So we've had a lot of this going on. That doesn't presume, though, the second thing that people said, which was, oh, just go online, everybody can do it. No, they can't. Not every single household has access to the internet. We look at some of our socioeconomic areas in our cities that you have a population of individuals that can't afford it. So not every home has access. And when you're locked down, you can't run to the local public library. The other thing that we take for granted sometimes is our rural areas. Some of those students don't have access to the internet because it's not out there. And so what we want to do is get an understanding. Do you have access to the internet? Because if you don't, that ties into how we're going to approach that particular student throughout the context of the year if something like this were to occur again. The next question, if they do have internet access, how many devices do they have at home that can access that internet? Again, too many presumptions. Oh, we're going to have all of our students come in, they're going to log in at a certain time, and then everything's going to work perfectly. Unless you've got a household that has one computer and 3 or more kids and maybe an adult that needs to use that computer too for meetings, how are you going to balance time? You can't have everyone checking in at the same time. So if it is a household that does have internet, but maybe they only have one device, what is going to be that flow, that schedule? Because then we'll have a better idea of how to work with those individuals too, again, in a hybrid format. So keep that in mind. Day one, get that information right off the bat because that's essential to how we're going to continue to move through this. The next thing we've got to be aware of is assessments. Guess what? We need some assessments as our exceptional students are coming back in. We'll need to go through and have reading assessments, speech assessments, functional skills assessments. Why? Because we need to know specifically where they are at so we can adjust the learning to where they are. We need to be able to walk in and not say, oh, we're just going to pick up from where we left off last year, or we're just going to pick up like everything's been normal. Nothing has been normal. We will never have a state of normalcy again. What we will have is a state that actually works better for the individualized support and care of our students. Within that construct, as we're starting to put these things together, we're getting the assessments in there. we are building then along the way. What should we be doing this summer as we're taking a look at the curriculum? A couple of different things come to mind. The one thing that comes to mind is this is simply a jump drive. It's a larger jump drive. The ironic thing, for those of us who've been in education for a while, remember the thrill of actually getting a 5-drawer filing cabinet. Why was that such a big deal? Well, back in the old days, if you had 2 or maybe 3 of those, you would actually have the ability to have all of your curriculum materials in one place. Same thing here, except this is going to hold everything that those drawers held, plus a lot more. You're already saying, well, wait a minute, I already save stuff on my computer. I save it on a drive at school. Have a separate drive where you've got everything copied into a set folder and have subfolders that break it down into specific units. Why? Because if we ever have a situation where we cannot go back into the classroom, you've got this set aside where you can quickly make adjustments to the needs of the students. What does that mean? Well, for those students that have internet access, guess what? Digitally send them some of the activities they need to be working on. But here's what you've got to recognize. And this goes back to that questionnaire right up front. Do they have a printer at home? Can they afford the ink at home? Because not everyone will be able to draw on things. So if you do have some digital things that the students will be using, are there ways to complete whatever the activity is on the screen? So be prepared for that as you're going through. Have things here. The other reason why you, again, want things on a jump drive is if we ever, again, have to leave the school, you have easy access to pull down things that you can then get copied and then either mail out or deliver to parents to say, here, this is the material that your students need. I know they can't access. Is this still a good phone number for you? I'm going to call once every day or two, whatever it is you're going to do to best support that student. Have that open dialogue, have that communication between parents going on, but have your resources, have your tools ready. We can't assume anything from here on out. So just be prepared as you're moving forward. The other thing that people will ask me is, well, what kind of instrumentation do we need? What kind of documents, what kind of tools are going to be good? The reality is this: we want tools that not only can be used in the classroom, but if we need to transition it back out to the home environment and then back again, we want tools that can be easy. I love, and you've heard me speak about it before, I love the C-Pen for our students with reading issues, for our students with dyslexia, for our students who have difficulties going through text or paper type documents. This is a phenomenal tool. Oh, and guess what? It can be easily transported back and forth. And so that's something that we want to consider. Do we have some of these available that the students can then take home? We are already going to be considering, with many of the technologies coming in, having technology set for a specific student and not share that back and forth. So do we go out and have something that is set? We can get sensors in the back so that we can actually trace to make sure in case a student loses it or misplaces it. But the reality is, do we have a one-to-one correspondence of the tools? The C-Pen is a great thing. Another great device to have for access when it comes to computers or anything with a cursor, Glass House. Again, for our students that cannot use their hands, this is a great way to actually use a cursor, and then whether you're using a bike click or some other type of switch, you've got access to that computer. And especially now that it will work with the cursor side of iOS 13, it's absolutely phenomenal. Again, easy enough to have a single student using back and forth. I've seen a lot of groups getting a lot of sets of LiveScribe Echo pens and the LiveScribe notebooks. Why? So that the students can be anywhere taking notes, doing things, and have the ability to have the recorded side of things along with their notes to make it easier to transition from location to location too along the way. How do we keep all these things together? I know this is going to sound crazy, but run down to your local dollar store or look around the house and see if you've got just a regular type of container that you can put things in. Label it with that student's name. Have it in that student's cubby as they come into the classroom, and know that if you've got to make an adjustment, where that has to get to a certain location because the students won't be there for a length of time, everything's already put together. And so as you're thinking of your curriculum, you're going, well, wait a minute, if I've got the tools already in place and the ability to access things, what am I revisioning here within the curriculum? There's the key. What you're revisioning in the curriculum is the multiplicity of delivery mechanisms. How do I translate that? Well, I translate it in this way. We've been so used to, here's how things are going to work, just one-on-one in the classroom. That's not always going to be the case. So this even goes into therapies. And some of you may have heard me speak about this in the other video series. One of the things, and I've worked with this, and I know some of my speech paths were the ones that actually originally described it to me, they're going to start considering being there in the classroom with that student, going through their activities, but having the student watching it through their whatever device they're using. Maybe it's a mounted iPad, maybe it's a cell phone, even if they're off to the side here. Why? Alternating being live one-on-one with this video series that's going on so that if a situation like this happens again, the routine and behavior has already been created where an individual student is not looking at the phone, not understanding why that person isn't there in front of them. They're looking at that phone because it's been something that's been alternatively used throughout the context of time together, and it becomes a natural part of their routine and a natural way to do things. So we want to be considering that. OTs, PTs, what are some of the things that you can build into, again, a video-like format, even if you're there, but so that if you've got to do things with the students and the parents later, you can be doing it in a face-to-face format as we go on. The other thing you want to be prepared for is during this summer, put together some of the positive ideas that you'll have. Maybe you're using something like the Discover Talking Pen and you're building a library of talking books. Great. Have some of these potentially available for the students that might need them, where they can turn around then, have it as part of their kit and use it at home, and they're still reading to themselves as they go on at home. Or if, again, you're trying to just access information, have already the documents set up with things for the Discover Talking Pen. I've got, as always, my Owateka Functional Skills Kit to actually talk about in a different way. You may have already gone through some assessments with this, but what I like about their kits is that everything is easily and readily put together. So you see all the materials already on the inside. Do this as part of your curricular preparation for the summer. Have these kits set up, but have a spare set or two set up so that if, again, we run into a situation where, oh my gosh, we've got a student, the student needs to be doing some types of functional skills along the way. Again, this is part of the assessment pack, but you might have different packs that you're using. They can't get all the tools because the tools are in the classroom. You've got packs set that you can send home then and have the students doing at home. Have them do some of those kits right there in the classroom with you. Because again, what you're doing is you are establishing a routine and a behavior that becomes consistent wherever that student is. So I recognize we are already going on close to 20 minutes on this video. But my message to you is this: as we take a look at this whole idea of curricular preparation, we do not need to invent the wheel. We've already got it, folks. What we do need to do is take a look at our delivery mechanisms, make adjustments, subtle adjustments that allow us to transition our students by creating those transitions already within the classroom. Guess what we're not doing? We're not having to painstakingly go over and do some of the things we had to do within a week to 2 week period. We've got to shift everything to online. Well, you know what? Now, if we're prepared by using as a foundation what we've already got, what we know works, If we're using that as our foundation, it makes the transition easier. And if we're thinking through the pragmatic use of it, as opposed to saying, well, we need a new curriculum textbook or we need a new series. No, what you need to do is take what you've got, take those curricular series that may be available online. Some of you may be using the PCI reading system, or you may be using Edmark online. You may be using other types of materials there in your classroom. Spell Read, I was just working with a group about Spell Read, another fantastic tool, but what's great is the students have sets of cards that they can be using, they can take home then. Those are the types of things you want to be looking at. Not we have to reinvent everything, but rather how do we take what we've got and revision it in a wider way so that now we have a consistency. We have a holistic approach to learning with the materials no matter where that student is. Thank you for all that you're doing. It's going to be an interesting summer to say the least, but know that we here at School Health are there to support you and the students as we go through. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out, rheipp@schoolhealth.com. I'll be more than happy to talk. I need to hear what you have to say because there's no one size fits all, but there are solutions for everything that we're doing. And I do so appreciate everything you're having to do.